this is Pearson with the Paralegal Bootcamp. We're here to discuss the 3 key factors of paralegal profitability and give you a few things that you could do to improve it if you're a manager or legal administrator in a law firm that has paralegals billing hours. So let's jump right in and get started. The 3 key factors that we're going to look at for increasing paralegal profitability are utilization, realization, and productivity. As law firms look for ways to stay competitive and profitable, they typically focus on attorney numbers and cutting expenses. And while paralegals are usually an overlooked area of law firm profitability, it is an area that law firm managers and legal administrators can have a direct impact on the firm's bottom line. Let's assume that you've got 20 paralegals who bill at an average of $150 per hour, and they have a $1,500 per year billable hour requirement. That's $4.5 million in potential revenue. And while management usually focuses on its attorney billable hours, this is no small number to overlook. Adding $4.5 million to the firm's revenue would be great. The problem is that the paralegal billable hours usually look more like this. So they're being utilized at maybe less than 80%, 10 of them, meaning they're billing around 1,200 hours each instead of the 1,500 that's budgeted for them. So we've got maybe 3,000 hours less than what was budgeted. Maybe 8 of them are at 90% or less utilization. That's another 1,200 hours less per year. And maybe the remaining 2 of the 20 are at 100% or more. That's $675,000 less than budgeted, less than that $4.5 million that we just looked at. Then some of those hours are written off by the billing partner or not paid by the client. So the revenue number ends up looking more like $3.5 million or less instead of $4.5 million. At first glance, it still doesn't sound so bad because the group is bringing in over $3 million. What usually gets overlooked is that $1 million gap, though, between what could have been brought in. Imagine what any law firm, regardless of the size of the firm, imagine what any law firm could do with an extra $1 million per year. Stick with me, I'm going to show you how to get that $1 million back using our sample group of 20 paralegals. Now imagine if you're watching this video and you have 40 paralegals or 100 paralegals. You could double, triple, or quadruple these numbers that we're going to talk about. So these are the 3 key drivers: paralegal utilization, paralegal realization, and paralegal productivity. And when I talk about profitability, I'm really talking about the potential for profitability, what they're contributing to the bottom line, not what they're actually profiting per person. Our first one is paralegal utilization, which is the percentage of time that's entered into the timekeeping system as billable to a client file compared to the time that the firm has budgeted for that timekeeper or paralegal to bill. In other words, how much of the paralegal's time is being utilized by billable work. So how can we improve that number? There are several factors that affect paralegal utilization rates. But there's one easy method that you can implement and see a significant improvement right away. And that is make your timekeepers enter their billable time into the timekeeping system contemporaneous to doing the work. Not waiting until the end of the day, not waiting until the end of the week, and definitely not waiting until the end of the month. Studies show that the longer a timekeeper waits to enter their time, the more time they lose. In fact, one study that came out many years ago from Altman Wheel said that if a timekeeper waits until the end of the day to input their time, they lose approximately 10% of that billable time. If they wait until the end of the week, they lose approximately 4 hours, and if they wait until the end of the month, they lose approximately 15 hours. Imagine if you have 20 paralegals waiting until the end of the day. That's 10% of their time lost. And you might have a timekeeping deadline of the end of the week. Imagine if they're complying with the firm's policy of having it all in at the end of the week, you're still losing time. So where does that lost time go? Well, it gets forgotten because it's not recorded right away. That 0.1 phone call and that 0.1 response to an email, they start adding up throughout the week and the month, even if it's a 3.5 block of time. As the timekeeper's inputting that 3.5, maybe a day or 2 later, they don't remember all of the detail of what they did. So they have a tendency to cut some of their own time. Maybe that 3.5 becomes a 3.1 because they can't remember everything they did during that block of time. Let's look at what it looks like with our sample group of 20 paralegals. 10% of the time is lost. They're entering it on a daily basis, but at the end of the day or the next work day when they come in. So that's only a 0.6 per day. But there are 20 work days in a month, so that's 12 hours a month. If they're working 11 months out of the year, minus, some vacation, holiday time, it's 132 hours per year. That doesn't seem so bad, but wait. You've got 20 paralegals waiting until the end of the day to enter their time. That's 2,640 hours, $396,000. So imagine if you could get $396,000 back into the firm's bottom line just by using that one method alone. All right, let's move on to our second key driver to profitability, which is paralegal realization. Because not every billable hour is the same. If someone's billing more hours than normal to complete a project just for the sake of trying to increase their billable hours, then they're going to be hit with the remaining key drivers, realization and productivity. That's why we're discussing all three of these factors today. So what is paralegal realization? It's the percentage of time recorded that ends up staying on the bill versus the amount that was entered into the billing system. For example, if $2,000 worth of time is recorded in the billing system, but $500 of that time is later written down by the billing partner, and the client's only billed $1,500, then the realization rate for that paralegal's time would be 75%. So what affects realization rates? The three biggest factors. Ask any billing partner and they will say, it's not adequately described, the work that was done. Or they just need to make general reductions in the overall bill, which, you wouldn't have any control over. Or it looks like it took longer than necessary to complete a task or a project. But it's just that it looks longer. The best way to increase paralegal realization rates is to make sure that your paralegals know how to draft time entries that show the real value of the work they did. This isn't about adding more words to the time entry to fluff it up or make the time entry look longer. The one method that will make it easy to show the real value is to look at every single time entry and ask a few of the journalism questions that are considered to be the basic information of being able to tell a complete story. So who, what, when, where, why, and how. Who was involved? What did I do? When did I do it? Where did it take place? Why did I do it? How did I do it? The most important questions to ask and answer is what did I do? How did I do it? And why did I do it? Because those are the questions that the client is asking. Particularly, why did you do this? Why did you need to do this? Why should I pay for you to do this? So let's look at realization numbers with our sample group of 20 paralegals. If you've got 20 paralegals with a 90% realization rate, which is pretty typical, let's assume we could reduce those write-offs by just a 0.5 per month. That's it, with just this one tip. So that's 60 hours per year. But then we have 20 paralegals, so that's 1,200 hours total. By $150 per hour, that's a gain of $180,000 that we could have back into the bottom line. But we're not done yet. The last key driver of paralegal profitability is the paralegal productivity number. What is paralegal productivity? Well, it's the percentage of time spent on billable work compared to the total hours worked. Not paid, worked. You can measure this by dividing the hours billed into the hours worked. In other words, if a paralegal left a couple hours early for a doctor's appointment, they might only work 6 hours because they used 2 hours of PTO. So they're paid for 8, but they work 6. So if they billed 5 hours for that day, the calculation would be 5 divided into 6, which would be a 0.83. Here's why it's important to look at paralegal productivity and why every billable hour is not the same. Paralegal A and Paralegal B both have a 1,500 billable hour requirement to meet. Paralegal A is working at 90% productivity, so that paralegal is going to meet that billable hour quota in 1,665 hours. Paralegal B is working at 75% productivity. They're going to meet that 1,500 billable hour quota in 2,000 hours. That means Paralegal B is working 335 more hours per year to do the same amount of work as Paralegal A. So let's look at one easy way to increase productivity. That is to start tracking it. You can use a chart similar to this and put a blank date at the top. At the end of the day, before they leave the office, have them look at how many hours they worked and how many hours they billed to client files. For example, if they worked 8 hours and billed 6.6 of those hours, Draw the line and see where they're at. This example would be 82 to 83% productivity. Or, to make it even easier, they could just pull up the calculator on their screen and do the calculation. That would look like this. Hours billed divided by hours worked. Just remind them that it's not hours paid, it's hours worked. The reason this works at increasing productivity, just simply tracking it, is because studies show that when you're keeping track, when you're logging something, you're paying attention to it. There will always be a slight increase. If you've ever been on a diet or just trying to eat healthier, you know this works. If you're tracking what you eat each day, you're less likely to have a donut and a milkshake for breakfast. It's the same with paralegal productivity. Ask them to track it each day and set a goal for a higher number the next day. It's the same thing with exercising and working out. Every fitness coach will tell you if you want to see progress and stick with your fitness plan, start tracking your workouts. So let's look at our productivity numbers with our sample group of 20 paralegals. If you could increase by just 5% the productivity for that 20 paralegal group, that's a small increase, just 5%, but remember our chart here. Let's assume they're at 75% productivity and you could just get them up to 80%. That's 125 hours per year. And 5% is not a big number at all. With our billable hour bootcamp, we've seen increases from 75 to 85 or 90%, like 10 to 15% increases. Now that is when they're implementing more than just this one method. So I'm going to stick with 5% and say they're just tracking it and they're able to increase it by 5%. It would look like this. 125 hours per year times our 20 paralegals is 2,500 hours. Times $150 an hour is $375,000. And that's just getting them to increase it by 5%. Now let's look at all three of those factors and how it impacts the bottom line. So we've got 20 paralegals. We've implemented one method, getting them to input their time while they're doing the work, and we've increased our utilization by $396,000. We've reduced our write-offs by just a 0.5 per month. That's $180,000. And we've asked them to start tracking the productivity and just increase their productivity by 5%. $375,000. That's an increase to the bottom line of $951,000 for just 20 paralegals, and just one small thing to impact each of our three key factors: utilization, realization, and productivity. I hope you were able to get some valuable information in today's video. Please feel free to call me or email me for additional information, or to just discuss paralegal profitability or paralegal training in general. Thanks and have a great day.